finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
Welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series. Last weekend, a very successful event at Parks, and now it's going to conclude September 28th at Monmouth Park. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. So glad you could join us. Coming up, we're going to talk about the development of historical horse racing machines and their impact in several states. But first, let's begin with Del Mar and Saratoga, Ray, wrapping up last weekend. And you can look at different measures as to how these meets went, but in general, it was pretty good.
Yeah, from a traditional sense, Saratoga had a phenomenal meet from the standpoint that handle was way up. They cut from 6 days to 5 days, which I think had a really positive effect on it. And at Del Mar, handle was down double digits, but they were happy. And the reason they were happy is because of all of the focus and attention that there has been on equine safety. There was not a single ambulance run in the afternoon. No horses were severely injured or euthanized as a result of racing at Del Mar this summer. That's the first time that's happened at a major race meeting. You know, it's a result of all of the protocols that they put in place.
It goes to show what can happen if you do get on the same page and institute some better protocols and safety measures, especially like, that team, that advisory committee they formed of vets and racing officials to go through every single horse and make sure they're sound when they're heading into the races. And I think that was one of the protocols that made the biggest difference, because you have those different set of eyes on every single horse. It's going to make a difference. And with the backdrop of what happened at Santa Anita, it was great to see that Del Mar could go through a whole meet with 0 fatalities. And, I thought the handle numbers, even though they were down, it was relative to the drop in number of races. They're trying to fit into a smaller horse population so that it all balances out and makes financial sense. So a little bit of a handle drop I expected. And when, with Saratoga's handle, it's very impressive. They dropped to 5 days a week and hit $700 million for the first time. And, the safety record at Saratoga over this meet wasn't quite as good as Del Mar's. But in the end, it turned out to be a successful meet.
Yeah, it was. And they may tinker. There's been talk of, for Saratoga next year, this year they eliminated Monday racing. There's been some talk about possibly adding Mondays next year and dropping Wednesdays, so they go Thursday through Monday. I think they're talking to local merchants about whether or not how much their business may have been affected by the change this year. So, by the way, they did this losing a lot of races off the turf. They had the typical summer weather, and that's another thing. The safety record. When you look at, there were 4 racing fatalities at Saratoga. They also had the sealed racetracks. A lot of rain came through. And that's kind of a repeat of what we saw at Santa Anita last winter. A lot of the fatal injuries were occurring either on a sealed racetrack or right after the racetrack had been sealed. And I think everybody understands that a sealed racetrack is not as safe as a track that you can maintain with a regular program, watering it, harrowing it, and that sort of thing.
But at the same time, New York has not implemented the same wide range of protocols that California has. California has stepped up above and beyond what has been done previously, matching more of international standards. And a lot of other states, including New York, have not done that, even though they've had, pretty decent safety protocols in place for several years, especially after the fatalities at Aqueduct. They ramped up things there. But we're starting to see that there are, the standard is, are you doing everything to prevent fatalities? Everything you possibly can. And I'm not sure New York at this point can say that.
I agree. I don't think they can. Ranging from how close before a race can you do corticosteroid injections to how much control is in place for workouts. Are there protocols for medications that horses can get when they work out? Should they be the same as the medication protocols for when they race? Those are things that California has made great progress on, and New York and other states, including states where the Stronach Group has tracks, and they're the ones that got the ball rolling on this because of what happened at Santa Anita. You need to see these in Maryland and Florida, where the Stronach Group owns racetracks as well. So I think I think there's been progress everywhere, but are they doing everything as you said? I don't think they are.
The other troubling part of this is the reporting of fatalities. It's still scattershot to me. The Equine Injury Database is starting to try to incorporate training fatalities, but it's hit or miss. And, not every track reports, like Oaklawn Park doesn't report for some reason. They say it's none of your business or whatever. I mean, that's just not really the right attitude here. We need to get all the information we can so that we can accurately show what is exactly happening. I mean, there's that guy who wants to kill horse racing, and he probably has one of the better databases, but we don't want that person to be the one that has the best information. And the media seems to go all over this guy, and in fact, there was an article out this week about the fatalities at Saratoga, and it was based on this guy's information. So that's concerning to me. The industry needs to get ahead of that.
Yeah, the industry hasn't figured out how to push back against extremists yet. One thing that was going on in California, which was, I think, quite effective, especially when it comes to local news media coverage, when there were protesters at Del Mar, when there were 10 people there holding signs that were anti-horse racing, there were 50 people who work in the horse racing industry, backstretch employees, other people, holding up signs in support of horse racing. And when you have demonstrators and counter demonstrators, you get a more balanced story than just when you have 10 people holding up signs saying that horse racing is bad. And the fact that these were a lot of the people that were counter protesters are the very people who get up at 3 a.m. and take care of these horses and provide this incredible care that these racehorses get day after day. The fact that it was those people counter-protesting, I think, was very effective.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we have a poll question about this subject. Based on the results in California in recent months with safety protocols and the increased measures, will other states start adopting more of these safety measures? Let us know at PaulickReport.com, where you can share your thoughts. Well, Natalie Voss just came back from a trip to Virginia, where she spent some time at Colonial Downs. Of course, they had their first meet. It's still going on in 6 years. And a lot of this has to do with the promise of historical horse racing machines, HHR for short. The revenue isn't even coming in from those machines to purses yet, but the track is spending forward to get the purses up to a level that's respectable, about $500,000 per card now, versus that's more than double what it was when they were running a few years ago. So do we put this on HHR? I mean, is this the trend?
That was a complete revival because of that, and it's the latest example, and it's a very good example of how historical horse racing machines, which originated way back when at Oaklawn Park, and look at what it's done for Oaklawn. I mean, they now have basically a full-fledged casino there. But Kentucky Downs is another example of a track that is currently operating, offering just incredible purses because of the year-round HHR machines. Churchill Downs and Keeneland have teamed up to put a second casino or HHR facility in that market near Kentucky Downs that takes advantage of Nashville. Ellis Park is doing well because of it. And really, when you look at Kentucky, in Churchill Downs, the purses this year are phenomenal because of Derby City Gaming that opened up and is putting money from HHR directly into purses and, of course, the racetrack's bottom line as well.
I think it's important to point out that HHR, these machines are slot machines. They look like slot machines. They behave like slot machines. They're slot machines. However, the way they're regulated is different from slot machines. It is considered parimutuel wagering because they are they use previous historical races, a little clip of those as part of the way the game goes.
Right.
So to this point, there hasn't been much pushback from the courts on changing that. So that's still an issue. But as of now, they are considered pari-mutuel machines, and this is a far better scenario for horse racing. If you're going to rely on some other form of gaming to infuse your purses, it's far better to have this form of gaming, which is regulated as a pari-mutuel game, than slots, which are regulated as casino games. So even though Arlington Park, isn't going to get slots, I don't know if it would have been, the greatest benefit to them versus having historical horse racing machines, because it's a slippery slope, and we've seen other states where the governments try to take away that slot money. And these meets that are these smaller meets that have had a great deal of success, mainly it's a lot to do with the purses being infused by HHR money. And there's kind of an effect that happens where the horsemen then, the next year they may get a few extra racing dates, and the momentum. I think that's what's going to happen at Colonial Downs. It looks like there's positivity on both sides, whereas we talked last week about Arlington Park and the negativity between the horsemen and the racetrack. These other places, there are a lot of smiles going on.
Yeah, it's great to have some good news, and where it's not 100% dependent on the government saying, yes, we'll let you have slot machines, we'll let you have slot machine revenue for X number of years. We saw what happened up in Canada, where the rug got pulled out from under Woodbine by the Lottery and Gaming Commission up there, and now they've had to reinvent themselves and have done quite well. But with HHR, you don't really have as great a fear that the government can just take things away from you.
All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series. One more round coming up at Monmouth Park on September 28th. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.